this symposium. We're ready to get started with psychology. So we have with us today Mann, and she's been doing some studies on social media and different traits, and so I'm sure we'll learn something new.
Hi, my name is Amanda Mann, and with the help of Dr. Dempsey, I've been working on a thesis research project. We looked for discrimination during the hiring process, separated out different traits. Previous research had shown discrimination against homosexuals during the hiring process. Horvath and Rath showed that attitudes about hiring homosexuals and perceptions of their masculinity and femininity combined influence the potential employer's decisions. My project sought to separate the variables of masculine feminine stereotypes, gender, and sexual preference to see where the discrimination occurred or if it was an interaction. The independent variables were sexual orientation, either gay, straight, or none listed, gender, male or female, and pictures involved. The pictures are examples on the slide. Those are the ones from the study of stereotypical, which are male on the top left, female on the top right. Non-stereotypical would be the bottom left for male, bottom right for female, and then for none available, we used that no picture icon. And then later during analysis, we added the rater's gender, either male or female, depending on who rated the questionnaire. Dependent variables, we checked 5 of the most desirable traits that employers look for according to Forbes magazine, which were positive attitude, responsible, reliable, dependable, and competent. We rated on the questionnaire, the raters rated on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being not at all, 3 being moderately, and 5 being very, how much they thought the applicants represented these personality or traits or qualities. Later during analysis, we combined responsibility, reliability, dependability, and competency due to a high correlation according to the analysis. But we left positive attitude separate since it seemed not to correlate with the other traits. Then we had an additional question of whether or not they would hire the applicant, also on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being definitely not, 3 being maybe, and 5 being definitely yes. Packets were passed out during Introduction to Psychology and Intro to Sociology classes. There were 18 different versions of the packets that contained the 3 manipulated independent variables. The packets had an instructional memo, a mock resume, a mock social media profile, and a ratings questionnaire to be filled out based on the resume and the social media page. They were each told to consider they were hiring the applicant and just to fill out the questionnaire whether or not they would hire them. Of the students who filled out the questionnaire, we had 395 in our sample. 205 were female, 190 were male, and the average age was 19 and a half. When it came to willingness to hire, we actually found no significant differences for the main effects and also no significant differences in interaction effects. So we had basically across the board the same willingness to hire all of the applicants. On how competent, reliable, responsible, and dependable they were, there were no main effects for the independent variables. We did find an interaction effect between applicant gender and the type of picture used. What we found on the left 3 bars you'll see are the female applicants applying for a job. The right 3 bars are male applicants. And the y-axis is the average rating. bar represents no picture available, so they were not able to view these people. The orange bars represent a stereotypical picture, so either a feminine woman or a masculine man. And the green bars represent either a feminine man or a masculine female. It's interesting, the lowest rated candidate was a feminine woman, even lower than a feminine man, who is a close second. So across the board, what we find is that we're recognizing the masculine traits above anything else. We had found no interaction for whether or not they were gay or straight or any sexual preference, strictly if they were feminine. And it's also interesting to note that the highest rated, though, is the female with no picture. So that I'm actually still trying to somewhat figure out my conclusion on that. But at least it does say that if you were a woman looking for a job, do not put a picture on your resume. When it came to positive attitude, there were no main effects for the independent variables. There was an interaction between the rater's gender and how stereotypical the photo was. In this, it's the same females on the left, males on the right. Purple was for no picture, orange for stereotypical, green for non-stereotypical. The main difference here was with the feminine male photo. Women seem to think that he appears extremely positive. Men, not so much. So it seems like there's definitely more of just a personal factor maybe coming into account there, as far as maybe it just makes men more uncomfortable than women. And also a stereotype women may have that perhaps feminine men are more fun. Because for some reason we also rated him twice as positive as all of the others. The conclusions as far as not finding some of what we were looking for could be that perhaps this generation is less biased as far as the sexual preferences and gender. So even though we found preferences somewhat along the lines of femininity, in the end, they were still willing to hire these candidates, even though they might have considered them slightly less competent. So perhaps we were seeing a lot less bias on gender and sexual preference. We actually had a lot more feedback from students, a concern of privacy, since social media was used in Googling applicants. This seemed far more of a concern for them than who the applicants were. Also, people could have been over-concerned with being unbiased, since as of right now, gay marriage and gay issues has been very highlighted in the local news. As far as the interaction effect with the applicant gender and picture and competency, we have had some feedback that perhaps the fact that she was blonde brought up some stereotypes. Maybe that was one reason people thought she might be less competent. We'd have to do follow-up study to see if maybe we found a difference between a blonde or a brunette candidate. And as far as the interaction effect with the positive attitude, it's also possible that the photos were just not equally balanced. When we went back to review, he's a lot happier looking. So possibly his photo in general appeared more positive. Maybe it had nothing to do with his stereotypical appearance in any way. But it would help to do in follow-up the separation, to kind of continue to separate where I did find a difference, and also trying to reason out some of the things that might have been flawed, as far as it would be most useful if I could actually do the study and grow on it, as far as adding additional levels, but it just was not available to me at this time. because one thing we did not look at were, different hair types, racial makeups, things like that. And are there any questions?
Did the instructions say what they were being hired to do, or was there any, you just said you're hiring them?
Yeah, actually the memo instructed them that they were to hire someone with basic computer skills to work in the office designing a web page. And the resume reflected that all the applicants' resumes were identical. They reflected that they had experience in that and that their degree was actually in computer programming. So we made sure that it reflected that they were qualified for the job. Although we did get some feedback that that also could be, since it's such a male-dominated field, could be another reason masculinity was so favored.
I have a question. How did you decide on what pictures to use for each of the packets?
Some of that, honestly, was some of my own kind of personal decision. But what I tried to go with were certain classic features, like for women, long hair, for feminine, short hair, for the more masculine. On the more masculine woman, like she had an arm tattoo, which is something that typically is not considered feminine. She had broader shoulders than the other. And then for the man, similar differences. The feminine man had narrower shoulders than the other, and also like a more styled hairstyle, and brighter clothing. Just what we thought were stereotypical differences in what people expect a male or a female to wear and do.
I also noticed the expression for the two on the bottom were both smiling and sort of bright-eyed. It was very, you pointed out about one, but the girl also, the stereotypical girls were somber. And I wondered if the expression even could affect the...
Yeah, definitely, like I said, with the positive attitude on the feminine male, but definitely that is something that should be looked at as far as across the board. They need to have the same expression. Something we did look for was similar in attractiveness, as far as how attractive they viewed the candidates. What we did not take into account was the facial expression, which is something we could work on if we tried to replicate.
Okay, let's thank our speaker.